Alrighty, folks. So it is January. It's the start of a new year, 2025, and usually that means the start of laws. The start of new improvised laws done by municipalities, done by governments, done by a lot of cities, metropolitan areas. They come together to enact these laws, and usually January 1st is the date that they proceed over it. And one of these law changes happened in New York City that's catching a lot of attention, including here in Toronto, because they're looking at possibly following the same suit. So, this article from the Toronto Star points out New York City has imposed a congestion charge on drivers entering Manhattan. Should Toronto follow suit? Canadian transport experts say a congestion charge in Toronto could be a more effective way to alleviate traffic jams in the city if the city could provide viable transportation alternatives. So, before we get into this article here, I just want to show a bit of this is a clip here from the local CBS affiliate in New York City and see how they implement this change. This happened obviously this year coming into January 1st, 2025. They rolled this out and see how they're dealing with this before we jump ship with Toronto implementing these same policies. Look at this.
Well, the countdown has ended. Congestion pricing is now here. At the stroke of midnight, the toll collectors were activated.
And we have team coverage helping you navigate it. Christy Kalishian is right by the toll reader on Lexington Avenue, where things got a bit heated last night. She'll tell us about that. But first, let's check in with Zania Maldonado. She's on the Upper West Side. She's got everything you need to know on day one of really what is a historical moment in the city, but also the first of its kind moment in the country. Zania?
Doug and Elaine, you can see the sign right over my shoulder. Congestion pricing January 5th. Of course, that's today, and it's here at the corner of 60th and 11th Avenue. That's because it's the start of the toll zone here on the Upper West Side. So let's give you a breakdown of what exactly drivers are going to have to be paying starting today. That toll amount is going to be $9, and that's going to be charged to you if you're entering Manhattan at or below 60th Street in what's called the Congestion Relief Zone. Drivers who take local streets below 60th with the FDR Battery Tunnel and West Side Highway exempt, they're going to be charged a once per day toll. That's $9 during the peak hours, which are between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. weekdays and from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. And outside of those hours, all drivers will have to pay $2.25. Now, some roadways, like we mentioned, the FDR Drive and West Side Highway will be excluded as long as cars stay off the city street grid. Also, Easy Pass drivers taking the Holland or Lincoln tunnels will receive a $3 rebate during peak hours only. And remember, New Yorkers who live within the congestion relief zone, they won't be charged to drive or park around that area. They will only be charged once they leave the zone and cross back into the zone. And it's not just drivers who are paying more. There is now a new 75-cent surcharge for taxi rides. Uber and Lyft is also going to be charging customers a congestion fee. That's going to be $1.50. You want to keep that in mind. We also want to mention later this morning at 10:30, FDNY and other officials are going to be holding a press conference to discuss how this congestion pricing is going to affect them. Especially, they said they're going to be focusing on discussing how this could affect emergency response time. So, of course, we will be there and bring you that information. For now, live from the Upper West Side.
So, this just seems more more over the top than it needs to be. Like, just even listening to that report, trying to follow along on the peak hours and non-peak hours and surcharges, but if you go down this route, you can not get this charge, you get a rebate back. Like, it just seems more confusing to something that it doesn't seem beneficial in the outcome of this. It just seems like you're putting more of a pain and struggle on people that have to commute. And I get that they're trying to, decrease the traffic measures, decrease gridlock. I understand traffic is chaotic in a lot of these big cities, in New York and in Toronto and many other places. At the same time, though, you're charging people in a struggle for cost of living right now. You're going to charge people an extra $9 to commute to places that they unfortunately have to commute in that way. And while you're trying to implement that by saying that, oh, people should be taking more public transportation, sure, a lot of people do take public transportation regardless of this tax or not. But at the same time, there's not really any measures to make it a feasible option for people to take public transportation. And especially not only just the fact that it's underfunded, there's lack of necessities that they need to improve on when it comes to an increasing population that's going to use more of this, but also the safety factor. Look at what we just witnessed with the Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny case. That goes on periodically, day after day after day. And a lot more people are discouraged from taking public transportation because of this. And none of this ever gets addressed. None of this has gotten addressed in the fact that they need to, in order for people to take more public transportation, subways, buses, what have you, need to address this issue. And I just don't think this is a plausible way to do so. So, in the article from the Toronto Star, a congestion charge, a long debated idea in North America, has finally come into effect in New York City and is being praised by experts who say Toronto could benefit from a similar approach. On Sunday, New York was the first U.S. city to adopt the system after years of studies and delays, joining the likes of London, Stockholm, and Singapore, which have seen lasting traffic reductions since implementing congestion charges. The toll system, which is applied to the most congested parts of the city, is a mean to reduce gridlock and pollution and raise revenue for public transportation. Toronto Council once endorsed tolls on the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway in 2016 to help improve gridlock in a city that has some of the worst traffic in the world. But the plan was scuttled by the Liberal government at the time. In the past September, the city's transportation department once again said a congestion charge on motorists is not an option on the table. Despite the Ontario government's efforts to double down on car mobility, Canadian transport experts say a congestion charge in Toronto could be a more efficient way to alleviate traffic jams. I do think Toronto is at the point where congestion is so bad, and the drag on our economy and our quality of life is getting to the point where this idea has to be on the table. And it has to be studied very carefully, says Maddie. I'm not even going to try with that last name. We're just going to refer to him as Maddie, a geography and planning professor at the University of Toronto. During peak traffic hours, between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays, and on weekends between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., drivers of cars, SUVs, small vans, and pickup trucks with an easy pass need to pay $9 US once per day to enter Manhattan south of Central Park. During off hours, the toll is $2.25 US for most vehicles. Drivers without an easy pass will receive bills by mail and pay more $13.50 US for peak hours and $3.30 US overnight. When charging a price on the road based on the laws of supply and demand, people will drive less and opt for alternative ways to travel to the city, said Maddie. Congestion has a price tag too. Even though it is often not thought of in this way, people either pay in money or in time and lost in economic productivity, he added. So this is him trying to implement businesses to go along with this. Guys, you know, your workers stuck in traffic, they're not going to be working as hard. There's going to be delays. There's not enough productivity. So yeah, definitely get on board with this. The latter was estimated at $11 billion annually in the GTA by a study in 2013. While Jeff Casello applied the congestion charge in New York City as a fantastic policy, the urban planning professor at the University of Waterloo said he is concerned about implementing a similar charge in Toronto when there isn't any viable alternatives for transportation. Imagine there was a massive park and a ride where you could park your car in a park and ride facility at Pearson Airport, for example, and then take the Up Express downtown. That's what we got to be encouraging, he said. Maddie, who echoed the sentiment, said if the system was implemented, the city needs to have equity at its core and make sure the public transportation is in place. He's optimistic that Toronto will see more alternative transportation options with the opening of rail transit lines like the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, Finch West LRT, and the Ontario line. So, again, it just seems more over the top than what it needs to be. And I understand the frustration of gridlock and traffic. If anyone's familiar with Toronto, you watch the news on TV, you see the long lines on the 401 of people commuting home, and it's just absolutely crazy. It takes like almost an hour, maybe an hour and a half for people to go across town to get back to their homes or to get into work. I know the frustration, but you're talking about implementing a tax on not only people that are struggling to make by with just cost of living and inflation that's already a huge factor on these people, but also it's not implementing into safer alternatives. That's why a lot of people they take their cars. That's why people take Ubers or take taxis. Because, yes, I'm sure a lot of people would take more subways. They would love to take more public transportation. I've rode the Toronto subway numerous times, and knock on wood, nothing has happened to me in the regards of safety. But if we implement ways to make it more feasible and make it more safer for people, that would be an encouragement. But so many people are seeing what's happening on streetcars. They're seeing what's happening on bus lines. They're seeing what's happening in subway facilities. And that is what's discouraging people away from this. And it's going to seem chaotic. It's just going to seem like a huge crisis for the people of Toronto. And the fact that they're trying to bring this to attention now when people are already struggling to make ends meet just in the regards of inflation, just in the regards of cost of living, is not the time for it. Maybe, if we find a way to make it more prosperous, that people have the money to do so, then maybe we be having a different conversation. But to have this right now, no, it's just out of the park. It's out of the park, ridiculous. So here's another news clip. This is from the Associated Press, where they actually interviewed New Yorkers in regards to what we saw with the CBS report there. This is them actually interviewing New Yorkers on what they feel about this surcharge, about this congestion tax, if you will. And listen to a lot of their remarks, because even people in New York City, don't see this as a viable option. So listen to this.
I don't think it's going to accomplish the result. I don't think the money's going to be spent the right way. I don't think it's going to go to the MTA, and I don't think the MTA is going to use it wisely. So I think this accomplishes virtually nothing.
Yeah, I ride the subway, but I think the bigger issue facing the city is the rideshare apps, Uber, things like that, which cause a lot of the congestion. So you had just the cars that are just vacant, waiting for somebody to call them. I think the price at $9 is probably too low to really impact the overall traffic situation in the city. The other bigger issue, of course, is that the proceeds from this plan are going to fund the MTA, which already has a massive budget and hasn't been reformed. And I think City Council and the state need to aggressively monitor where those monies go.
So you just heard two people there, kind of a little bit difference in opinion. One saying that it's not going to benefit anybody, it's just a waste of time. And the other guy you just saw there was kind of hinting about, well, yes, the Uber sharing Lyft apps, they're causing a bit of congestion, and I already take the subway as is, and $9 is going to really affect anything. But even he mentioned that, Okay, you're going to raise money for the transit authority in New York City that already has a huge budget. So, in regards to this, in hindsight of all this, why are they not just taking that budget to make it more feasible and reliable for public transportation instead of resorting in this crap? Because, again, I feel like a lot of people, if you live in these big populated areas like New York City or Toronto, where it is congested, it is a traffic nightmare, a lot of these people are going to go towards public transportation. They're going to see it as a more feasible option of transportation. But they're not going to see it if they know that the city that's trying to enforce this is not actually doing the whims of the job to actually make it better. And like I stated, where's the money efforts into improving the subway system to make it more safer, to make it so that families can go onto the subway, not just random individuals? Where are the implementations for that? And New York City, they have a huge budget for public transportation because a lot of people take the subway. A lot of people take public transportation. You know, it's almost a certainty if you're a New Yorker. You almost have to take it because everybody knows, like, driving through there, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. Same with Toronto. But these metropolitan areas, they have the budget, they have the means. So why are they not proposing to increase it and make it better so that it will be more prosperable for people to take public transportation? Instead of doing this nightmarish, crazy, just insanity that you're going to mail people a tax for congestion. A congestion that they can't really control of. That's just traffic. I mean, if you're going to do this in Toronto, I guess every city's going to have to do this because there's going to be traffic wherever you go. There's traffic wherever you go. And it just doesn't have the model and just the fortitude to do this. And also the fact that they're doing this in a crisis of cost of living, the crisis of inflation. You're going to charge now $9 for people that maybe have to go to work. Maybe you have to pick up the kids from daycare or pick the kids up from school. Maybe you have to swing by the grocery store. You know, already an influx of unaffordability. And now here you're implementing a charge for people to do that. Like, it just seems so out of whack. It seems so out of whack. Luckily in Toronto, we already have a system in place. We have the expressway, the 407, that already kind of does that. But at the same time, you're going to do this to individual streets. It's just, it doesn't seem like this is going to go well. And obviously New Yorkers are feeling the same way. And they got this. They unfortunately got this no matter what. So I think even Toronto just even highlighting this is just absolutely ridiculous at a time like this.